Great people in a great city.
Yes, well, those dulcet tones are Toli Banta-Cain. He's two-time Super Bowl champ, former linebacker, winning back-to-back rings with the Patriots, 6 seasons, 2 seasons with the 49ers. And he's also worked with the sports platform Obsesh, and he is with us here at the Power Players Summit. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here. You know, when you come to an event like this, there's people you know. It's just the world of sports is just exploding on so many different levels. You know, what is it that's interesting for you right now when you look at the game and...
What's interesting, I mean, when I played, there was no social media, there was no Twitter, no Instagram, any of that stuff. I mean, it was at the tail end of my career.
Yeah.
So for players now, just to have that platform or so many platforms to engage with their fans and to really tell their stories, I mean, that's an awesome time for sports in general.
Hey, I want to talk a little bit about going from player to coach and in changing sort of the idea of what you're doing out there on the field. How do you do that? How do you make that transition? And how do you take what you learned as a player and help younger people and people earlier in their careers?
Well, you just have to, reflect on the time that when you were a kid or when you were young and realize that, these kids they're trying to get where you're at. And so you have to draw from that knowledge and experience. And from going from player to coach, I think it's a lot of when you listen and watch other styles of coaches, then you can kind of see what works for you or what worked for you and what didn't work for you and try to make it your own.
All right, you know what we all want to ask you. So talk to us about playing with the Patriots and Tom Brady.
Dream come true. I mean, it's been over 10 years now. It's just, when I look back, it's hard to really believe that happened to me. But when I was drafted to New England...
Did you want to be there?
I didn't even know where it was, to be honest. I had no idea where New England was, what it was about. I knew they had won a Super Bowl 2 years prior. So getting there and being able to win a Super Bowl my rookie year was like, really? Because I never went to a bowl game in college. Went to Berkeley, the powerhouse.
Yeah.
And then to win it back-to-back was just like, oh, man, I'm going to the Super Bowl every year. And then obviously playing with great guys like Tom Brady and that whole team, from the Mike Vrabels to the Teddy Bruschi's, Troy Browns. I mean, everyone that was on that team was just a special type of player.
Because you do realize not everybody has the same experience, like the same, you know what I mean? There are other players with teams where it doesn't necessarily go so well. Like, something's magical.
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking to Eric Dickerson, who was like, did you play? I was like, yeah, I played. He's like, who'd you play with? New England? Oh, so you won some rings? Yeah, I won some rings. Did you win some rings? No, I didn't win any rings. So it's like, wow, I mean, this is Eric Dickerson, kind of,
incredible.
And all of the fact that I won rings. And it's like, there are a lot of stories where I don't take for granted the fact that I won 2 of them.
Yeah.
Surprised by Brady's retirement at all?
I mean, I'm not surprised because I wanted him to go out where the game didn't take him out. You don't want to see him leaving the game on a stretcher, right? So the fact that he was able to do it on his own terms is great, but I don't count him out making a comeback.
Really?
I don't. Knowing the type of person he is, if he stays in shape and he sees an opportunity to win another one, he's going to take it, knowing who he is.
Where would he do that?
There's other teams, right?
There's other teams. I mean, I'm sure he would. I mean, San Francisco would be a good fit considering that was his childhood dream team.
Well, it's interesting, too, as a player, and there's this, the conversations we often have at these events is players who play really well and then they're done, and then they're in a tough way, either financially or thinking about what comes next. How do you think about that?
I mean, I think it's a serious issue among a lot of players because, you got to think you're coming into a professional game at 20, 21 years old. You don't really have that much business acumen or business sense. So when you get into the real world, the NFL can prepare you in certain ways with, teamwork and working with people, but there are other things that you kind of miss by not playing or not being in that realm. So I think a lot of players, they try to get into it and it can be overwhelming.
Hey, we've been speaking a lot today about the Brian Flores lawsuit and the lack of diversity in the NFL, especially at the coaching level, not to mention the ownership of team levels. Would be curious to get your thoughts on this and where you see things right now.
Well, I mean, the game is changing, and the league itself is changing where, they're trying to make room for minority players and coach. Well, players obviously, but the coaching realm is wide open, and I think there's so many worthy candidates to get in it. So
Why isn't it happening?
Well, it's you got to look at the top. I mean, the ownership is, I would say, 90% Caucasian, or what's the right word? European
right.
descent.
Yeah.
So, I think when there's a time where players may come together and, crowdsource some money and maybe own their own league.
Well, I was thinking about your background. You're African American, right? Also,
Yes. I'm Irish. I'm
Scottish,
black and
Irish descent. It's great, but that's so American. Like, we're all got the melting pot. But it's so true, right? That's our common ground. But I'm just curious, why we don't understand that's the thread of America, right? And why isn't there more of that common ground in sports, in the NFL, and just more generally?
Well, I do think it's evolved. I think it's gotten better if you look back just in the history of time. But I think with everything happening now with social media, the internet, we're seeing a change. And I think the game, and what I'm actually about to start doing myself, I'm founding a new type of league, or a new type of exhibition game for NFL players. That's kind of what's happening with boxing, where you see Jake Paul and Mayweather getting these big events, but we don't even know who's the up-and-coming title runner, right? So I think the same thing can happen with the NFL, where you can get an exhibition-type game put together where guys can play one time in a pay-per-view event and people eat it up.
It's a great idea.
What does that look like? Is that something that happens in the U.S.? Does it go abroad? How is it paid for? How is it supported?
Well, similar to just like the boxing realm, you got big sponsorship money, but the pay-per-view itself will I think, based on the ticket price, will cover it. And then you look at players, being able to get a percentage of that pay-per-view sales.
I was just going to say, players get a bigger piece of it, right?
Exactly. So that's something I'm actually in the works of right now, of putting together an event, because you got to think, after the Super Bowl, there's no more football until August.
God forbid. You can't have a dry spell.
I know, I'm depressed.
Can you give us names of players who have said yes to this?
I can't. Unfortunately, I can't. But just be on the lookout for an exhibition pay-per-view event coming soon.
It's really smart.
Cool.
I mean, one of the conversations we've been having a lot is just athletes owning their data, being much more in control rather than a whole other infrastructure that takes advantage of it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why, you're seeing it in the boxing realm, and you're seeing just the whole pay-per-view event setup is great for this type of thing.
Bengals, Rams.
Who we going with?
Yeah. Hurry up.
Oh, man.
We
Okay.
got about 20
All right.
seconds.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say it's going to go either way by a field goal.
Oh, so be close.
Yeah, I'm
a good
thinking
game.
yeah.
All right.
Definitely.
I think he said Bengals.
Did you say Bengals? He's hoping for
Let's
that.
go with the Bengals.
Oh, okay.
Let's go
Thank
with the
you.
Bengals. I like underdogs.
Let us know when you get that exhibition game together. Love to talk to you
Definitely,
about it
I
more.
will. And yeah, check me out on the Obsesh platform.
Obsesh.
They do a lot of work with athletes and helping out youth get questions answered.
Be well, Tully. Thank you so much.
You got
Take
it.
care, everybody. This is
Appreciate it.
Bloomberg.
Happy Super Bowl.